I want to extend a warm welcome to everybody that has taken time to join us today. Today, we are revisiting the topic of embedding everyday places and spaces with opportunities for learning. Evan, if we could go to the next slide, please, that would be great. Thank you. Something that sets this conversation apart from others that we've had is that we will be taking a deeper dive into the strategies and challenges through the use of breakout rooms, with the hope that we can unpack these elements together through conversation. As noted in the slide that you're looking at, go back one, please. Thank you. As noted in this slide, we began this year with a census through the What's Working Exchange to learn more about how communities are doing this work. What emerged from that census is that different communities are at various stages, and these projects do have some common themes, which we hope to unpack a little bit today. We touched upon these during a special session during our GLR week in late July, and we look forward to building upon these learnings even more with our conversations. Next slide, please. Thank you. Today, we will also be documenting all of your thoughts in the conversation. I will be sure to send a follow-up message to all registrants with the key takeaways from each of the breakout room conversations. We'll be using Jamboard to do this documentation. At this moment, I am pleased to share who will be leading the conversations today. We have two CGLR community leads with Lisa Greening and Marissa Smith, where they have invested in these efforts in their communities. We are also joined with two of our senior consultants who are overseeing the Everyday Places and Spaces Coalition work, with Siobhan Reardon and Lisa Hofstein. Next slide, please. Joining us in the breakout rooms are some special guests who are experts in the field with proven strategies that have worked in their communities and within their respective organizations. At this moment, I would like to pitch the mic over to Siobhan, who will walk us through the foundation of Everyday Places and Spaces and what we note as the ecosystem of out-of-school learning. Siobhan.
Thank you, Malai, and hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm going to start this when I want you all to think about this graphic and where you see your work in out-of-school learning and ecosystem work in the work that you're doing. And I'm going to give you some background on this. So Everyday Places and Spaces began over 3 years ago and has been working to build a collaborative of folks established to fuel, inspire, and accelerate the embrace of communities as learning-rich environments. The collective, representing more than 40 public, private, and social sector organizations, has coalesced to pursue the potential and share the joy of transforming ordinary places and spaces into learning-rich environments which are accessible to children and families of economically challenged and fragile and otherwise marginalized. How, where, how, and in what kind of environment this takes place and the resources needed to succeed have been meaningful conversations in helping us think through the ecosystem you see in front of you. The graphic on your screen begins to help us focus on what we believe are 3 key arenas that naturally help support where a learning-rich environment could and should occur. In the first circle, all learning begins at home in an engaging, parent or family-centered, safe environment filled with learning-rich supports and materials, as you note outside the loop. How do we connect with families to ensure their homes are learning-rich environments with the tools for success, such as digital access? We identified secondary places and spaces where families have to go, most regularly: laundromats, grocery stores, barbershops, family centers, restaurants, various transportation modes which families use. Here we believe that it is critical that each of these everyday places and spaces should and could be a learning-rich environment for children. And we'll hear more about this over the next hour with 2 communities, particularly St. Louis and Wake County and Pinellas County, Florida, in the stories that they're going to share with us in this work. The third circle defines how cultural institutions, community amenities, libraries, and houses of worship are real opportunities in which communities could and should activate to engage with families to ensure that they are first aware that these places exist and that they are also seen and felt as welcoming, accessible, and affordable. In today's conversation, we will dissect this ecosystem to see if it's hitting the right marks, responding to the right communities, and acknowledges the necessary supports and encouragement families need to ensure that their child is provided every opportunity to become strong, secure, and adaptive learners. What we learned from the What's Working Exchange is just there how many communities are involved in this work. And becoming aware of that really does help the campaign and Everyday Places and Spaces coalition begin to think about how it is we push this movement, take this from a coalition to a network to a movement. And with that, I want to say I'm taking a look and seeing in the chat and see if seeing laundromats, barbershop, and other informal spaces are where people are seeing in their communities with this type of work. The Boys and Girls Club in St. Louis. Great, it was great. So let's move on. I want to turn then the mic back to actually over to Lisa and see, or am I alive back to you?
Thank you, Siobhan.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and just ask a few questions. We have two inspiring leaders that are going to join us in just a moment here and talk a little bit about the work that they lead within their own communities so that everybody here can get a flavor of what we're really talking about. This will be before we go into the breakout rooms. So I do have some questions. Joining us are Lisa Greening, Executive Director of Turn the Page St. Louis in St. Louis, Missouri. And then we also have Marissa Smith, who is a family liaison coordinator with Wake County Wake Up and Read Coalition. So I'm going to start with Lisa and just ask you, Lisa, a few questions about your work here. Can you share a little bit about your organization and your community? Who do you serve? Who do you work with in St. Louis?
Thank you, Campaign for Grade Level Reading, for inviting me today. Yes, I am the Executive Director of St. Louis's chapter of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. And something that is noteworthy is we're probably one of the youngest chapters of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. We were inspired by the amazing work happening in across the state in Kansas City, Turn the Page KC. So we stole their name, love their name. We're now Turn the Page STL, but with the hopes that eventually we'll become Turn the Page Missouri. Like I said, we are one of the youngest. We started pretty much right before the pandemic hit. And just a little bit about us, we knew that there was a big issue in St. Louis. In our 7 lowest performing Promise Zone school districts, at the time before the pandemic, only 24% of our 3rd grade students could pass the 3rd grade statewide proficiency exam. Now, since COVID and our 2nd year back in school, we're now down to 17% of the kids passing. So there is a crisis happening in our community, and it became apparent what was happening in Kansas City needed to be happening in St. Louis. And it also became apparent that we needed to be working together better in a fragmented St. Louis so that all of our libraries, schools, nonprofits, families are working together to create reading proficiency, 3rd grade reading proficiency for all. So we knew the problem, but we didn't know why. We had the research out from the Annie E. Casey Foundation and the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. We met with many people across the country about what the work they were doing, but what was happening in St. Louis. And we spent an entire year listening. And this is one of the most important things I hope people take from today's webinar is that you have to listen to the people that you're serving. And we did that. And we had 8 different focus groups with families. Luckily, we got that work done right before the pandemic hit. But then we met with all of our superintendents in the area, and we met with teachers, we met with librarians. nonprofit organizations, and we wrote a collective impact strategic plan. So it was kind of backwards. We didn't say, okay, here's the problem, now let's find the solution. We just listened. And we listened to the community, and we came up with 5 major factors. I guess you can go to the next slide. 5 major factors. Oops. Next slide. Oh, there you go. Here in St. Louis, why a child cannot read proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. Our children weren't kindergarten ready. Big summer learning slide. And I see that Betsy King is on this webinar, who's with one of our summer camp programs that is really leading the effort in infusing literacy daily in our summer camps. The 3rd was teacher preparedness. Are our teachers prepared to teach a child to read? That was a huge shock to me at the time, that was a prevalent issue. Family engagement and community awareness. We formed work teams of 10 to 12 stakeholders for each one of these factors, and we meet monthly. We provide national research, and we look at how other grade level reading communities are tackling these issues. We take the best, and we provide. When we get into the next set of questions, those factors are all affected by everyday places and spaces. So I will be coming back to those factors. Go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lisa. Marissa, can you share a little bit about your coalition with Wake Up and Read? Just give everyone a sense of whom you work with and what you're seeing in your community. Just a little bit of context. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Wake Up and Read is the campaign for grade level reading community here in Wake County and has been for the last 10 years. As a collective impact initiative, Wake County Public Schools serves as our backbone agency. Wake County Schools is the largest school district in North Carolina. It's 15th in the nation. We have 198 schools. 119 of them are elementary schools. The school district serves about 159,000 students each year. Wake Up and Read is made up of 30 agencies. Next slide, please. There are larger agencies such as our Wake County Public Library System, all the way to those grassroots organizations such as churches and smaller nonprofits, all working together within the coalition. We have a leadership team that provides governance and direction for our work, which is divided into 3 pillars. Those pillars happen in action teams. We meet monthly. There is a school readiness team, a learning opportunities team, and my favorite, the one that I'm most involved with, the Engaged Families as Partners team. Historically, we focused our efforts in 15 partner schools and 16 child care centers. We usually reach about 9,000 students throughout those schools and child care centers, providing summer learning materials for them, usually about 10 books each to support their learning over the summer break.
Great. Thank you so much, Marissa. That really helps Lisa and Marissa to just kind of paint a picture of who it is that you're all working with within each of your respective communities. Evan, if we could go to the next slide, please. We're going to have a second question today, which is why has your team taken on investing in learning rich spaces and everyday places? Like, what have you seen that led you to this work? Why do you see that this is important? So I'll ask that for Lisa first.
Excellent. Two things I will say. One thing before that, and I want to reiterate this, is that what we knew with our strategic planning process is that you can't just build something and expect people to go to it. You can't just say, okay, let's have a book festival here because they're giving us free rent. You need to find out where families are. And you need to talk with families and you need to be there where they are. Thanks, Malai. Be at neighborhood events. Listen, even if it's not a literacy event, be there as part of the community. And we also learned that what I'm about to tell you, it's not a straight path. This work of literacy rich spaces and everyday places has been a roller coaster. But what goes down must come up, right? So we're coming on up. So what happened to us is in St. Louis, our family engagement work team decided that it would be so fun, and it was, to pay for your kids' meal at McDonald's all day for everybody that showed up, and they get free books and literacy resources. We did laundry days. We're paid for people's laundry. We also went to some festivals, and what we realized is that this was really fun, but it was just one little shot in the arm. It wasn't day to day places. So we were Chick-fil-A here in St. Louis and a McDonald's approached us, and one laundromat, and said, we want to have learning rich spaces in our space where our families come. And so that was the great news. What happened, though, was then we applied for some significant funding to start reading areas and book areas in our laundromats and in our restaurants, and also in many of our other businesses. And we didn't get funded. I'm being honest with you. Now we're down the roller coaster because we couldn't show outcomes. We could show outputs, but we couldn't show outcomes. And we couldn't say that if a business had a learning rich space, that would directly lead to third grade reading proficiency scores. So now, thanks to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, we're getting a lot of that. Yeah, it is a real challenge. We're getting a lot of data from the Campaign for Grade Level Reading to continually push for books and reading areas in businesses and neighborhoods. We have also started working with our museums and zoos and libraries. Specifically, we're down a path where we're going to have a zoo reader program where our pre-K kids are going to go to 3 field trips over the course of a year and become zoo readers. And that means that they can go back for free and they can get another book and free parking and an icy. So we're working with how we can continually do this. Next slide. Oops. That's
yeah, that's Marissa's, but go ahead and finish your thought, Lisa. But I do want to acknowledge what you said about the funding and that challenge. That is a thing that we're going to unpack even more in the breakout rooms. But go ahead and finish your thought.
No, I was just saying, recently what has happened is we've put together 40 little free libraries, thanks to CARE St. Louis. What we said, well, this is great to have books, but we need families need even more than that. And so we're creating, and I don't know if you have this slide, but we're creating informational stickers and stuff with QR codes so that families can then go in and get many more literacy rich options, including where they can get tutoring, where they can get free books, where they can get early childcare. So it opens up, these everyday places open up an avenue now for us to not just have the spaces, but to provide the resources that people need.
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Hold that thought, Lisa. I know we have that slide. It's coming up in a bit with that third question about how it is that you do that work. I do want to turn to Marissa, for Marissa to share more about why your team has invested in this concept as well. And then we'll hop back to you, Lisa, with the idea of the QR codes.
Wake Up and Read has invested mainly out of just love for our community and wanting to do what's right for the children and families that live in Wake County. During the pandemic, a greater sense of urgency emerged from a need continuing to provide access to families and expand our efforts in specific communities that were affected the most. And where there was the greatest impact, the greatest opportunity for impact. From there, Reaching Families, Raising Readers initiative was born, and that is a community-based outreach working to build trusting relationships with families and community partners. In addition, we just believe that literacy is a right and every child deserves high quality learning experiences. The examination of our performance data here in the district of children of color from those underrepresented and marginalized communities helped solidify the fact that we have serious equity issues facing our community, and we had work to do. Not only that, but we realized that there's power in community. We had a desire just to tap into the community assets and really leverage the support of our willing partners here to help support early literacy. Also, there was just a realization that the demands on our schools were great, and we wanted to reinforce that learning happens outside of the school day. There are opportunities everywhere families go for learning to be different and engaging and still be effective and support students' growth. Lastly, we wanted to learn from and with our community. We also want to learn so that we can be a model for other community partners on really how to capitalize on those non-traditional spaces in those everyday places to ensure that children are learning in every place that they may go. Next slide, please. So some of the results we've seen have been amazing. We've seen some great transformation in our community and the support of our family partners, which is really reaffirmed for us how essential it is to provide all children and families opportunities to read and play and learn in spaces throughout their own community. We've been able to co-create a parent leader network, which is a growing core group of parents that come together monthly to learn and grow as kids for their children and to learn how to be the best first teachers they could possibly be. Next slide. We meet families where they live, where they play, where they shop, and where they worship. Next slide. There's been an increase in high quality, diverse books and literacy experiences that are really reflective of the community that we serve, of which the families really appreciate seeing families that look like theirs in the materials that we share with them. Next slide. Through our Reaching Families, Raising Readers initiative alone, we've been able to increase book access with the implementation of 23 Little Free Libraries, with plans to increase that amount throughout this year. Story walks, we've connected families with over 13,000 books just in the last year. 11,000 families have been enrolled in Ready for K, which is a text messaging program that offers strategies in reading, math, and social emotional health, and so many more resources. What you see on the screen is a collaboration between Wake Tech students, Wake Technical Community College students, creating story walks that they then help use out in the community. Next slide, please. We've also seen a change in our community. Our Campaign for Grade Level community is realizing a need to begin literacy conversations earlier with families. On the screen, you see the Mexican consulate including literacy in a community baby shower so that new and expecting moms and parents can learn more about the importance of literacy, brain development, and to help build their baby's first libraries. Next slide. We also work with DHIC, a local housing developer. They are installing little free libraries on all of their playgrounds on their properties and hosting family engagement nights, really trying to engage the families in a unique way. You'll also notice on this slide that parents are learning and their children are learning and receiving instruction during a home visit through the HIPPY program, and that is through the implementation of the Home Instruction for Parents of Preschool Youngsters program that visits homes.
Thank you, Marissa. I heard a couple of things in your sharing, Marissa, and also what Lisa was referring to, that relationships, number one, relationships with families are very important with these kinds of projects. And also I noted the access of books being absolutely everywhere in all places, with little free libraries, with your partnerships with barbershops and with laundromats and with neighborhoods. I do want to hop back to a question that resonated with me from Paul, an attendee. He was wondering, Lisa, about your Reading Captains program. This goes back to that relationship component that I just mentioned. If you could share a little bit more about Reading Captains, that program that you just launched, what their role is and how do people find them? And then I have an overall question for both you and Marissa.
So first of all, Turn the Page STL did not create the Reading Captains program. We, again, looked at our Campaign for Grade Level Reading chapters and saw a very successful model of this in Philadelphia, was our primary place that we copied. One thing that we did differently, though, is that we train people in the neighborhoods that we serve to be reading captains, and we compensate them with a paycheck. So, you know, I think it's 10 hours a week, 8 to 10 hours a week. And how we find people is just like a job. A lot of word of mouth. I have to big shout out to Ready Readers, which is a nonprofit organization in St. Louis that I went to, and I said, would you be willing to do this work? Because Turn the Page STL is very small and very new. And so I provided them with all the research, the resources, the community connections, and they're actually doing the actual work of the Neighborhood Reading Captains program. I also wanted to, is that good?
Yeah, thank you for that. I thought that was important.
Yes,
Reading Captains embeds that idea of relationship. So thank you for relationship a little bit more.
It is all about families, and I wanted to say just 3 more things. One, the books that you put out need to be high interest, you know, like we're talking about Woody there, and culturally relevant, and what every child deserves. That's something that we've realized, taking books that libraries are taking off their shelves and putting them in little free libraries, it doesn't work. If people don't want to read that book, people aren't going to read that book. So that's one thing. We are, our next step with our little free libraries, what I love Marissa saying, is that we are going to our local housing developers. Those are great places to have a large group of people, little free libraries, neighborhood reading captains, and some of these beautiful landscapes of storybook walks and things. Those are prime places to go. Now that we're hooked in with families are telling us now they spend the majority of their weekend with their children in sports programs. So now we're talking with sports coaches about how they can create reading clubs. So keep going back to the families. There are inspiration. We're going to talk about that soon. There are interest, and our interaction is all based on relationships and trust. And then we're going to talk about investments also soon. and you just got to keep working at it.
That's right.
So,
Thanks, Lisa.
mhm.
Evan, can you just go back one slide? I just want to give nod to Lisa's QR code because we kind of skimmed over that really quick. And these are all of the things, Lisa, that you're doing in your community, the nuts and bolts of what's going on. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention here? And then we'll move forward with Marissa.
No, it's just our way of getting resources out to families in a very inexpensive way. You just put them in an easy to read format on your website. You can change your website, you can add additional stuff, but those QR codes will just take you right back to that family resource area of your website.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, Marissa, can you share just some nuts and bolts about projects that are happening within your community? And then I do see another question that's popped up in the chat, but Marissa, go ahead and do the sharing and then I'll ask that question.
Okay. Obviously, most importantly, we've seen a shift in mindsets, which has kind of set the tone for other transformative change. We've increased community collaboration between partners and agencies. Agencies are really thinking differently, more creatively about their role in literacy and integrating it into these everyday spaces. So the next few slides will highlight some of that integration and partnership amongst community agencies. So what you're seeing is, oh, could you go back a couple slides? So what you're seeing here is a partnership between NC State University, students who are learning to be Spanish speakers, actually learning with students that are native Spanish speakers that are coming to the Mexican consulate to wait on, paperwork and all these things with their families. You're seeing books in barbershops and salons, the Reach Out and Read program in our doctor's offices. Next slide. You're seeing 2 local churches that have been committed to bringing families together in a different way for family engagement nights in partnerships with local schools. And another church that has developed an after-school program and other family engagement resources to pair with things like their food pantry and their clothing pantry so that families can have their needs holistically met. Next slide. You're seeing folks that traditionally would not be as focused on literacy, like the YMCA and the Raleigh PD, now hosting events where they want books and literacy resources there, even from the health fairs to the trunk or treats to community days. They want story walks, they want books there. Next slide. Here is a partnership between 2 of our biggest supporters, the Wake County Public Library and Marbles Kids Museum, that have worked together to create a program for children ages 3 to 5 who have not participated in any kind of preschool program and have not yet attended kindergarten. So those Ready, Set, School family play dates are opportunities for families to come together and learn a little bit to better prepare them for entrance to kindergarten. And you also see the bookmobile that travels around to some of those everyday spaces like community centers and churches and those kinds of locations. Next slide. And this last slide is the Raleigh Parks and Recreation Department offering just summer pop-ups to get families out and, getting books while they're exercising and getting the fresh air. And this is a partnership we have with Raleigh Parks and Recs to do Moms Mornings Out, where the moms get together and learn, and then take that information and those resources back home to then try out with their children. So as you can see, all of our partners are key in our work. We rely so much on collaboration, but we do have a few key partnerships, the Wake County Public Schools being a huge contributor, in-kind support in the way of providing our building space. They also fund the position for our Wake Up and Read administrator. Wake County Public Libraries does book drives for us in support of our large book distributions each year, and they invest in things like story walks. Read and Feed helps supply some of those additional staff members that help do the work. DHIC, we've talked about, they strategically plan for family engagement. They do literacy programming, tutoring on site, and they allow us to place little free libraries on their properties. Marbles Kids Museum gives free passes for families to enjoy the museum and come and learn. And they work with the libraries to provide those preschool prior to preschool experiences. So as far as funding goes, that's not where I spend the bulk of my time, but I can tell you a little bit. Our partner agencies often integrate their streaming funds and in an effort to provide more broadly range coalition activities. We have gotten grants from United Way and other local endowments, and Wake County Schools has supported and sustained a good bit of our work. Wake Ed Partnership serves as our fiscal sponsor. The community supports with their monetary and book donations. They shop our wish list to make sure that we're providing the right books for the right communities. And we rely so heavily on our volunteer support. They provide a great deal of our day-to-day operations, from hosting the book drives to collecting and sorting and distributing books. Last year, we had over 700 unique volunteers join us to help do this work. And so we're very appreciative of our volunteers.
Marissa, that's fantastic. When you and Lisa were both describing your work, I'm envisioning these complex webs of relationships that move everything forward. And so I appreciate actually both of you sharing the context of how you're doing this work within each of your respective communities. If we could go to the next slide, please, Evan. I just want folks to kind of center on how we're going to divide up the breakout room time and acknowledge a question that came through from Leah from 313 Reads about impact data for Little Free Libraries and also for those book distribution things that happen where we're giving free books in the home. Leah, I want to let you know that is a question that we're going to unpack more closely in the breakout room, because sustainability and funding and philanthropy, I think Lisa Greening, you may have even said this, that sometimes that funding is hard to come by because you are looking at outputs versus outcomes. So while we just think a little bit about that, just know that that question is going to come up in the breakout rooms about impact data for Little Free Libraries. So Marissa and Lisa, just know that that's coming. That's a question
And
coming.
just
Go ahead,
know,
Lisa.
you can purchase now with Little Free Libraries a library counter. So it tells you how many times now that the Little Free Libraries opened. And then obviously you can see how many books are taken out. And with stuff like this, it's just got to be survey driven.
Yeah.
You now have these strong relationships with families. You need the stories. It's just, so. And there's two types of storybook walks: permanent, and then those that look like yard signs. And there was something in there, and both are wonderful. Obviously, one is less expensive than the other.
Yep. Thank you for that. So now we're going to go deep dive a little bit closer to these topics and the strategies. And this is where we can really be honest with each other and talk about the challenges too. And so, Evan, if you could help us get into our breakout rooms, we're going to divide into two rooms. so that we can spend some time with each other talking this through. We're allowing roughly 50 minutes or so. I see that we're running a little bit behind, but we're going to close the breakout rooms at 1:50. So that's 1:50 Eastern time for everybody. And then we'll have some time on the back end to unpack what we've learned.
As we begin, I work closely with Siobhan on the Everyday Places and Spaces team. And I just want to follow up her comments with an additional welcome from the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and from our EDPS team. We're now well into our third year. We have over 40 participating organizations in our coalition. Our goal as we move forward is for this to become a network and ultimately a movement. And I believe most people in this group are a vital part of that process. Ultimately, our goal is to disrupt generational poverty. We start where it matters most, in the communities where families live, work, and play. And just yesterday, I had the pleasure of visiting a laundromat in West Philadelphia, where our coalition members, Laundry Cares, Read by Fourth, and Too Small to Fail, each had volunteers busy with children in their vibrant play and learn centers on site. The volunteers were busy selecting books and reading with the children while their parents either participated at the tables or were getting their laundry done free of charge. Families left with new book bags, new books, and big smiles. It was delightful. I'm sure you all have plenty of experiences that you can share, similar experiences that you can share from your organization. This is just one example of EDPS at work, making a difference on children's development. I also want to mention, Siobhan did not mention this, that on October 25th, we will be hosting another virtual gathering for the coalition members that will further focus on family-centered learning, as well as shared examples from Charlotte, North Carolina of EDPS in action. This is largely an invitation-only event, so please let us know if you would like to be included. We have a high-powered, inspiring lineup for the day. And if you find today very inspirational and informational, reach out and we'd love to get you into the mix on the 25th. Thank you again for joining us. Many thanks to Malai. We are excited about this new format to engage and share amongst participants. And it's a pleasure to turn this back over to Marissa to lead the interactive part of the conversation. Thanks for your forecasts also.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining our breakout room. I just want to give voice to the fact that we have some of our partners here with us. We've got an amazing volunteer, Lynn and Denise from Wake County Smart Start. So grateful. I hope I represented us well. So grateful for you being here. Grateful for all of you. So what we'd like to do is start by thinking through how every initiative goes through various stages of development, right? We want to spend some time talking through a few of those stages, from inspiration to how we gain interest and support, the interactions that happen with stakeholders, and then finally, the biggest piece is the investment. What it takes to sustain it, and make sure that the initiatives live on even past us. So if throughout our time this afternoon, if your agency is navigating any of these stages, I invite you to unmute and just share your experience. So if there are not any questions, we'll go ahead and get started. Are there any attendees that are in the inspiration stage of a project? If so, tell us a little bit about how you're getting started and what are some of the things that you're facing. And no folks in the inspiration stage. Everybody's up and rolling, huh? Okay.
I'm happy to talk about an inspiration that we're having at Laundry Cares, if that's okay. I'm Liz with the Laundry Cares Foundation. I am, to my heart and soul, a children's librarian. I was the director of children's services for Chicago's library system for years and years. And this is my laundry literacy is my retirement passion. We put a spot in a Department of Corrections in the maximum security waiting area. And families who come to visit detained family members love it. And we've seen a huge increase in the number of kids who are coming to visit loved ones because we're giving books out. And so we're trying to think through how we can fund a position of someone who can be like a reading captain, someone who can be the story person who's there to really facilitate play and learning in the space. And we've got a couple grant proposals out, but if anyone's doing anything like that, I would love to hear about it. We have a sheriff's office who is very proactive, really kind people who are thinking through ways to bring some justice to the justice system. So that's an inspiration that we're in the middle of right now.
That's so interesting, Liz. We're doing, I'm going to try to remember the name of the organization or person we're working with, but here at Book Harvest in, North Carolina, we have just started to bring books on family days to prisons and signing up kids and families to receive books directly to their home. So when they come and visit their family member, they can share that. I'm going to, when I stop speaking, I'm going to look for the name of the organization here and the person who's contacted. We haven't, it's really sort of a pilot program, as is a program we have working with Native American communities on reservations to bring books to their kids as well. In terms of funding, I mean, we've invested some of our own capital into that just to get it started. There's some movement in North Carolina on the state level to make just the resources available to people who are incarcerated. But private philanthropy is really the way we've mostly gotten it funded at the moment.
Thank you, Isabel.
Isabel, what you're describing sounds a lot like what Helps Education Fund does. They have a similar program that goes into specifically women's prisons and really teaches the parents first, and then those books are sent home so that the families at home can share the big themes of the text. And then when they come together for visits, it allows opportunities for discussion. And so it's great to hear that work is kind of spreading throughout Durham as well. We're doing some of that here in Wake County.
Marissa, I just wanted, when we're talking about inspiration, I just first of all wanted to acknowledge, I didn't see she was on, but Carol Auerbach is with us, and she's been an inspiration for us and helping us get the everyday places and spaces off the ground. I don't know, Carol, I don't mean to put you on the spot at all, but if there's anything in terms of inspiration that you might want to share as well.
Well, the only thing that I can say, honestly, is that I'm inspired by listening to each and every one of you. And every time I've gotten onto any of these calls, it brings tears to my eyes that there's so many people on the ground who really care, as you all do, and not only care, but are doing. And again, I know that it's difficult to deal with people like me, the funders who do ask for the impossible, which is to see, we all want to see, and you want to see it as well, all of those wonderful results. And I'm a psychotherapist by profession, and I do remember when I started many years ago, someone said, if you can just change 10%, of that person in some way, that will be a major change. And I suspect that we have to be realistic. We have to always constantly work towards that goal of every child being able to read by the end of third grade. And starting, I mean, I've started with Ralph Smith years and years ago, probably over 30 years ago, when we started all of this. And we always talked about the role of parents, and caregivers. Like, because again, I was one that always said you needed to think even beyond parents. There were important, significant people in the child's life that also needed to be dealt with. But again, I'm excited, and again, Lisa knows I'm not usually quiet, but again, since the questions you're being asked are not things that I'm grappling with personally, so I'm just sort of listening, but again, very inspired by what all you're doing, and very grateful and appreciative.
As we are to you, for sure, Carol.
Thank you for sharing, Carol. How about even if you're not in the inspirational stage, how about we talk a little bit about how you're engaging families as you create plans, as you move through stages? How are families involved? How are their voices elevated?
Hi, so I can kind of jump in and talk about this question. So, hi everyone, my name is Brianna Ray, and I am a Community Collaborations Coordinator at the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. So, JWB is a publicly funded, mission-driven organization, and we serve as the background for the Pinellas campaign for grade level reading, in which I serve as the lead. So we have literacy-rich environments that have been started within the past year or two with our organization, and it stemmed from a training subgroup that is within our organization. So we have about 86 partner organizations or partner agencies who work with us collectively on the campaign, and underneath that, we have our training subgroup who is focused on literacy initiatives and training components. So they are really the ones who brought the idea of literacy-rich environments to us, and they were very interested in starting these in their own sites. And we have implemented them in a few places, such as a Boys and Girls Club, a neighborhood family center, and with our city of St. Petersburg. So as far as how we make sure that we are centering families, we do this by really allowing the individuals and agencies who are in this training subgroup to be the ones who are leading the initiative. So they are the ones who are coming to us and doing the research about what they would like in their site and how they would like their literacy-rich environment to look, because they are the experts on their families, they are the experts on what's happening in their communities, and each of them is very unique. So as I said, we let them kind of take the lead on what that will look like, and then we provide support as far as figuring out what books would be great for having in this space, what kind of furniture, what should the setup look like.
That's great. Thank you, Brianna, for sharing. Anyone else?
The work that we do at Book Harvest involves parents both as employees and participants in programs. And we actually use the voices of parents to promote the work that we do. We just had actually an article published in the Journal of Early Literacy, which talked about, and I could put that in the chat too, which talked about how we center the voice of parents and all the work we do, and how we, talking about this subject of outputs versus outcomes, and how the bulwark of academia doesn't necessarily hold the voice of parents as a meaningful measure of efficacy. One of the things we're trying to do is to lift up the voice of parents and their experience so that their reports are efficacious, right? And demonstrate, perhaps outside of the conventions of academic research, but their lived experience is worthy of demonstrating outcomes. It's not just EOG scores and and all of that. So
Isabel, I'd love it if you could share. I'm sorry, Liz, to cut you off, but if you can share that article, that would be fantastic, because I'm seeing that as a theme.
Sure.
Go ahead, Liz. I apologize.
Oh, it just got me all excited, Isabel, because it makes me think about, the funds of knowledge and how we can start embedding that very simple concept that communities and people are competent and have agency and lived experience that we should be drawing on, and how we can use that along with sort of the root cause of reading trauma and reading deficiencies in evaluation. And I really think that funds of knowledge, I don't know how to do it, but I think there's something so valuable to that work that you've been leading at Book Harvest, Isabel. I'm here in DC at National Summer Learning Association. So Rachel Stein is here. I'm going to go find her and talk to her about it.
Oh. Oh my gosh, we were just emailing. So that's very funny that you're all together. And of course, we love your work, Liz. And anyway, it's all a happy family, and we're all in the struggle together, right? I mean, like, how do we really center families and respond to their voices and lift them up and
kind of get out of their way?
Right.
So I talked a little bit about our Parent Leader Network that's just been in existence for just a year now, exactly. And in that group, what has happened is it started very small, and families, it just came because they wanted to learn more. They wanted to hear what it was all about. But then after really realizing, number one, the power that they have as parents and the need to really advocate, both in the community and in their school district, just this love for, this thirst for more knowledge and more ways to get involved, it has evolved throughout our time together, this last year. And so what really moves some of our work forward is helping them be a part of from start to finish, every decision we make, every action we take. They're out in the community seeing the needs. They are developing, curriculum and things that are going to help other parents really understand the sense of urgency. And so we do that just by asking them. We do a lot of listening. We have listening sessions where we're just talking with them about what are some of the needs and what are some things that you think might be helpful solutions. And so does anyone else have some examples for how families have been involved? Or even if you're not there yet, what are some strategies that you're taking to do that, to become more inclusive of families?
Well, one of the things that we have at our Girls and Boys Club is we have an academic program that goes along with all the other activities that the kids are involved in after school. And every kid that comes into our program is pre-tested with the Gates-McGinty reading assessment. And anyone who is more than a grade level below in reading qualifies for tutoring. And so we involve the parents by letting them know, that this opportunity is available for their child, and that the more that their child attends our program, the more, chance that they'll get to get one-on-one help with their reading and to increase their literacy skills. So, it's really up to them from there then to follow through and make sure that their child attends and that they get that resource. And then just partnering that with the fact that we are, involved with Lisa, the one that was talking before with Turn the Page STL, and we are on the ground floor with the Ready Readers. Their initiative, one of our campuses is in one of the neighborhoods that Lisa mentioned, and their block captains are just getting started. So they just had orientation, and they had it here at our Girls and Boys Club. And so we're still figuring out exactly how that partnership is going to look, but we're excited to be connected with them.
Thank you, Betsy. That's a great segue into our next question. Who are some of the key partners that you have? Who's helping you do this great work?
Well, for me in laundromats, it's certainly the public library. And, I revealed myself. I am a librarian, but libraries have had a hard time coming back from the pandemic and do not have the verve for outreach that they had before. They just have lost so much staff, but the library is really critical. We just had an event in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it was a ribbon cutting on a new Read, Play, Learn space and free laundry to the community. And I thought it was going to be an introduction of the library to the laundromat, and kids were running up to the librarians because they knew them, because they are out in communities and they had already been at the laundromat bringing books. So libraries have been really critical to us. Certainly the whole CJLR family has been critical for us to develop local relationships across the country, because this is a national effort. So we did 5 events and 5 ribbon cuttings in Atlanta, and it was only because of this relationship and this partnership with CJLR that we were able to get to National Black Child Institute, that we were able to get to the library. There are so many organizations in the greater Atlanta area, but those were all introductions that we made together. And I just think, the whole topic of partnerships is just so critical for all of us. And I heard this great quote yesterday. I've heard it before, but it just makes me think of this conversation, Marissa. It's an African proverb, actually, that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's what we're all doing here. We're knitting ourselves and building ourselves together to really equitably serve kids.
I mean, Liz, don't underestimate your role at Laundry Cares. I mean, we fell into the laundromat world kind of accident. I mean, by happenstance. and then we discovered, like, who knew that their coin laundry owners were part of some national organization? I mean, it was like the last possible thing that I could ever imagine. And that they were interested in children's literacy. Are you kidding? Like, it was just kind of wildly crazy coincidence. So the work that the Laundry Cares Foundation is doing is incredible. And because we did a couple of, we had a wonderful laundromat owner in North Carolina who helped us. And then we just went and we knocked on the doors of a couple of other laundromats in our community. And it was incredible to hear that laundromat owners really thought, what a totally great idea it would be to have books in the laundromat while the parents are in here 2 hours, 3 hours a week. The kids are running around. Like, they totally lapped us. So, and it's similarly with a couple of barbershops and salons. So that's been certainly very helpful to us. But, I love that you're a librarian, Liz, and you happen to be working in this kind of unexpected industry that permeates every community where families spend so much time. So, like, the obvious sometimes is like our parks, and we partner with our Parks and Rec. I think Marissa, you were saying that too, with Parks and Rec folks. We call them book boxes, not little free libraries, and we place them by childcare centers, even home daycare centers, and of course Parks and Rec locations. So, okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
We've also found that, like, WIC centers and your pediatricians and doctors' offices, it's a great place because, anybody who has kids know some point, you're sitting there waiting. So it's a perfect way to entertain your children. And with us, it's they get to take the books home, like in the WIC offices and also the pediatrician's offices. Though it's a win-win for everybody.
Thanks for sharing, Joanna. Are there some places that you want to be, but there's some barriers to making that connection? Are there some agencies that you hope to partner with, but you just can't make things work? And if so, what do you think? What are some of the things that prevent you from forming those partnerships?
I mean, you can shut me up, Marissa, at any time. Like, seriously, it's totally fine. I think the impediment to that is human resources.
Wow.
Like, if we had enough, sure, our office is in a strip mall. And so there are plenty of places here. If we had the time and capacity, we could knock on and have books, and navigate the process by which partnerships could be cultivated and established. That's all that work that happens between conception of an idea and execution.
Mm-hmm.
But that's people, that's money.
Right.
I
appreciate your lifting that up, actually, because when we talk about resources, usually the first thing that pops into our head is money, not human capacity. When I was a community lead, I remember the volunteer component being incredibly important, but so important that it was also prohibitive of us being able to do the kinds of things that we wanted to if we had a down volunteer year. So like when COVID happened, we did so many programs that were outside of the school because schools were closed, but then getting those volunteers when we relied on a volunteer base that was mostly seniors, like that became really challenging because our typical volunteers during COVID time, as folks that maybe were a little bit more vulnerable to the virus, they were not wanting to volunteer and do book distribution events. And so human capacity became both something that we needed, but a barrier for us to be able to push out into that. So thanks for lifting that up. I think that's important to say.
And real.
Yep.
It's very real. Like at Laundry Cares, there are two of us. There's a laundry guy and a library lady. There are two of us. And we're really limited by that. And but when I think about libraries as the expert witness here to public libraries, I also think I'm just going to name it, I think there's institutional racism that hasn't allowed us to put staff in our public libraries to push out the kind of real community engagement and real work that it would take to lead more just service to public library communities. So I'll just say that.
I did want to comment on what both of you said. Speaking as one of a team of 2.5, we do a lot with a little, and we have our volunteer Lynn here, and I'm going to let her speak to that if she wishes to, because she spends a good bit of her time supporting our work. And so, but I also know that we are governed by this leadership team. And although everyone sees the need of, expansion and wanting it, there's also this security of, doing things the way we've always done them and not stepping too far, into the unknown. And so, that is a huge barrier for us. And so is the lack of human resources as well.
Well, and we were talking before this all started that another issue is there's like a high turnover rate anymore because it's hard to keep people in positions. There's 3 of us and one position's a new position. So when you have that kind of thing, it's hard sometimes. And same thing with all our organizations. We've really had to come in and help them figure out how to stabilize that.
When relationships are so important, that something you just said is really problematic when there's a lot of high turnover and you get a new person. And that when I was with United Way, that would happen frequently too. So thanks for naming that. I appreciate that. Okay, I know we've got only just a few minutes left. Marissa, can you fast forward us to that sustainability thing? That question that Leah asked in the larger group is really in my mind.
So would like to hear a little bit about how you, number one, sustain your efforts, and then how do you measure whether you've accomplished, the goals that you set out to?
Okay, I can take this question first. So I think that it's really important in order to keep the work going and sustainable is to have a person in that lead position. So we have had, kind of talking about what Joanna said and all of you talking about the staff turnover, we have had that, and I am new in my role. But it's really important to have someone who is responsible for keeping the needle going, continuously communicating with our partner agencies and working on projects and initiatives that are needed and are important to ensure that your work, your campaign, all that you are doing is successful. As far as measuring our progress and outcomes, that is currently one of the challenges that we have. So our campaign is larger. As I mentioned earlier, we have 86 partner agencies. So when you have a campaign at large, it's sometimes hard to evaluate or to know what to evaluate. So what we have as a goal in the future is to put someone onto that and have that be their key role, is to measure our progress and outcomes and to figure out what is important to measure and to kind of know what is our return on investment and what do we need to invest in further.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Brianna.
I mean, the real challenge with this sort of work is what are the outcomes that are meaningful to drive to? Those of us who do the work believe that having a home library of books, particularly self-selected books, for every child from the moment they're born, paves the way to school success, employment, civic engagement, health, happiness, flourishing. Funders, many funders, not every funder, looks at that and says, show me the data.
Right.
Measure it quantitatively.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the, sort of embedded racial injustice, all of those measurements that exist are often very tainted, shall we say. So that's, in terms of like the mega struggle here, sure, we measure how many books do we provide, how many locations do we, those are outputs. Are we measuring what language development is being reached by that? We don't measure that. In part because we don't have the capacity, and in part because we don't believe those measures are really designed to adequately reflect the progress and impact on the children and families we serve.
Yeah. Well, I think we're measuring against like European white education systems and models, right? And
I mean, we've been lucky to be sustainable. We have a very robust fundraising. We've been very lucky. We did get ARPA money from Durham to do, our version of Little Free Libraries. And lots of foundations, but that also takes human capital. Staff of people who are really focused on what are those funding sources? How do you get them?
We're going to close real soon, but I see Carol has unmuted. So
I had just wanted to ask, where has everybody been successful in raising funds? because obviously that is a major, major issue and nothing that we're going to be able to discuss this very moment because we only have 14 seconds.
I know. I want more time.
But worthy of a longer conversation for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Right.
We'll definitely revisit this. I absolutely will come back to this.
And the whole area of value.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I don't know if anybody else wants more time. I feel like I wanted more time. I just want to appreciate everybody in my breakout room, at least, who added to the conversation. Carol, we cut you off. I apologize for that. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention? And then I'm going to maybe we'll wrap things up in kind of a larger group. I see your head shaking no. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our conversations, just kind of go through some of the key takeaways that we learned. And Lisa Greening, I saw a note behind the scenes that our recorder, a person who was recording Siobhan, lost internet in your room. And so I apologize for that. But I wondered if you or someone who is in breakout room 1 could just pull out some of the high level things that you took away from your conversation.
Yes. Be very, know what your community needs. Wrap your outcomes based on how you can talk with your community. So if you're, whether it's with surveys or with barbers or with librarians, how, wrap your outcomes with your stakeholders, with the people, the families that you're serving and the organizations that you're with. We talked about, let's see here, how inspired people were, how interested the community was in many, many communities, and a lot about the collaborations that it takes a lot of collaborating, whether it's with the city hall, like in Omaha, with the government, or it's with the local barbers. And so, how you need to do this through collaboration. We also know that you can have an organization that like the barbershops where families are already going, but you still might have incentives like free haircut. There's also everyday places and spaces where families, you need to get them there. And so think of the logistics and think of ways that you can get families there. I loved, free ice cream, whatever it is. So, and the favorite quote from Switch was "smooth the path." I love that. I won't give, but smooth the path, meaning for families. So that's what we talked about.
Great, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. And I saw Monica's summary too. Thank you so much for noting that. Within our room, our breakout room 2, some things that I pulled out, and I do want to mention too that I documented everything, all the stuff will be sent to everybody who registered. So if you were in one room, don't feel like you're going to miss out on the other conversation. I'll be sure to synthesize everything. Some things that I heard is the important role of relationships and very unique partnerships within all of this work. We talked a lot about families, centering of families. I thought this was a really important piece of the conversation about how families are a very integral part in not only being the recipient of those programs, but in co-creating the programs alongside the person or alongside the organization who's doing the work. Marissa shared quite a bit about that, and some of our other key partners that were in that conversation shared about the co-creation with families. We just started to touch on the idea of how to do the measurements. And so Lisa, thank you for sharing that piece about how that came out within your conversations. For measuring within our piece, we talked about, how can we share those outputs, knowing that funders are going to be looking at outcomes, and is that just driving towards that? Isabel, you said that very well, with knowing how we want to measure, knowing what it is that we're trying to drive for, what is the bigger picture with this work that we're trying to get to, and framing that within the progress of what we're doing. So in a nutshell, that seems super fast. I know the time went really, really fast. It always does. I do want to give nod to the next Crucible of Practice that will be coming up in November. We will be talking a lot about collective impact. Leah Van Bell, are you still here with us? I don't know if she's still here, but we will be joined by, yeah, Leah. Leah is going to be leading that Crucible of Practice with collective impact, and so thanks, Leah, for joining us today. We'll be doing again breakout rooms about collective impact and how we can all work together, and how we can do even a deeper dive into that data component, which is so important. Leah, did you want to say anything to preview, or we'll just keep it secret, I think, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't have to be a secret. We're just really interested. Oops, I hear a feedback loop. In connecting and learning from and with. So we really center that we're all learners, we're all teachers, and we've had quite a journey to really live the work of collective impact. And we're really excited about where we're at. And so we're just looking forward to being in conversation about it.
Thanks so much, Leah. Thank you. I have feedback loop too, so I'm just going to keep plowing through. Evan, if we could just show the last slide and we will wrap up. We wanted to give a preview of our other GLR Learning Tuesday opportunities that are coming up for the month of October. We also will be sharing this out through the follow-up resources if we're not able to get to the slide. But I wanted to give a shout out to everybody that was here today, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us in this conversation, and we will see you all next month in November. Thanks, everybody.